Hi, everyone. How are you? Awesome. My name is Mike Caffarella. Thank you for attending our panel discussion today. Today, we're going to have a panel of luminaries talk all about AI companies and entrepreneurship here at the university, but also with trends going on in the scientific and industrial world as well. So going from my side of the stage further away, we're going to start with Jason Corso. He's a professor here who received his PhD in computer science from Johns Hopkins. He's also the co-founder and CEO of Voxel 51. It was founded in December of 16 to do video understanding tasks. To his left is Mike Van Lent. Mike received his PhD here at Michigan in the year 2000 and also spent some time at the University of Southern California, I believe in the, creative technologies. This is sort of game technologies and research, right? Excellent. And about 10 years ago, moved back to Ann Arbor and joined SoarTech. SOAR Technologies is a company that was founded in '98. He's now the CEO and president of it, and also the chairman of a spin-off called SOAR Automotive. Jason Mars is a professor here. He's CEO of Clink, a company that focuses on intelligent assistance, especially in the finance industry. His research is in systems architecture, both software and hardware, and that with an emphasis on both the data center and AI systems design. He got his PhD from the University of Virginia. And then finally on the end, to his left is Ritu Das. Ritu is also a professor here. Before that, she was a research scientist at Intel Labs, and she serves as CEO of a new precision medicine startup called Sequel. It was founded in June of last year and focuses on analytics for genomic sequencing tasks. Finally, on the end, we have Nell Doherty. Nell is the Senior Director of Corporate Relations at the Business Engagement Center here. She handles a lot of strategic contacts with companies and all the sort of business and technical relationships with startup companies here at the university. All right, so thank you for coming, and thank you to our panel for pitching in today. All right, so I've cunningly left my questions over there on the page. So excuse me one sec while I bring up the document. All right. I guess what I'd like to do is first hear from everyone on a couple of core questions. Maybe you could give us a few sentence description of kind of the core idea behind your company, why it's a good idea, why it is exploiting some recent trends in AI or data-centric research, and then why you decided it was the right time to start your company. Jason, you want to kick things off?
Sure. So as you heard in my talk earlier this morning, right? So video is everywhere. Video is like a common communication medium. It crosses boundaries, crosses markets, crosses borders. It's everywhere. YouTube will have, I don't know how many hundreds of hours of video uploaded by the time this panel ends. But raw video is kind of useless unless you have humans to look at it. So in order to actually pull the value out of video, you have to turn it into information. And so that's what Voxel 51 does, and it also enables other companies to do. So we are building a video understanding platform that allows other companies and other individuals to pull critical information out of the video and incorporate it into their decision-making systems.
As to why you felt it was like the right time to do your own firm?
Well, I mean, it's hard to not know about the AI bubble right now, right? And so I think that's the obvious answer, right? So it just seemed like a good time. I mean, for me in particular, I had been building a relationship with someone in the government, and a grant from that program was able to start the company without dilutive venture capitalists for the first couple of years, although we've now switched over to venture capital funding. So I think both of those things together made it a good time to start the company.
So SoarTech got its start building AI models that emulate human behavior. Initially, the focus was on emulating human behavior to populate different kinds of simulation environments. I think that what we've discovered along the way is the same technologies that support emulating human behavior also support building AI systems that are not black boxes, that you can understand, a layman can understand what's going on inside them, can hear explanations about the reasoning, and talk with the AI about what's going on. So that's really, I think, the core of what we do is emulating human behavior and then building AI that's not a black box so it can collaborate closely with humans. So in our case, why was it the right time to start the company 20 years ago when the company was founded? And what really triggered that was a large project at the university that concluded and built a set of intellectual property. In this case, it was a set of AI models of Navy pilot behavior, for which there was a strong pull within the Defense Department to take that technology further. But the work to do that wasn't university research, it was much more applied research. And so that really spawned us, I wasn't there at the time, but spawned the company to get founded and license that technology from the university and use that system as the core around which we started to build and expand the company.
Thank you. So, I became a professor in a pursuit to have impact on the world and to change the world. And so published a lot of papers, did the work that I thought was relevant to society and the world, attempted to create some open source offerings that could change the world, and realized that really when you want to hold yourself to the highest bar for impacting every human on the planet, doing that with a platform that is a company is a necessary thing to do. So we started Clink in 2015. We came upon a discovery that the technology in the market for conversational AI is a decade behind what is possible if you applied the best science and innovated on the best science. And so we saw, with some of the contributions we were making in the lab, an opportunity to bring those contributions to the market in a way where we can create an experience that was markedly better when it comes to conversational AI, and hold ourselves to the bar of having that experience be as close as possible to speaking to a human in the room. That means being messy, unscripted, changing topics, coming back to topics fluidly. And so in Clink, we invented a new approach to dialogue management and a decoupling of dialogue management from response generation logic that allows for complete free-form transitions between topics. And we don't really have a flat notion of intents. We have something we call transitory classes that's built into a finite automata, basically. And those transitory classes could be traversed both with classification work, with acknowledging slots extracted so far, all the contextual knowledge that's built throughout the progression of a conversation while you traverse this finite automata, and having new classifiers in every state of that finite automata. That's really the key idea of Clink that gives it its power. So we started a company in 2015 because it's not a very timely, it's not a good time, actually, in my career to create a company. I'm on the tenure track, 3 or 4 years into my tenure story. Had a kid a week before we started the company. However, what happened with some of the offerings we made to the market via this open source contribution, the pain in the market was crushing, and it was crushing in a way where the interest that was inbound to me to help large organizations with their conversational AI challenges and the honest, poor state of the products and the science that these products was using created a clear communication that there is a void in the market, and if my goal is to have the maximum impact on the world, I had to take the opportunity. So we started a company. We're about 75 people now. We're on track to do 12 million in sales this year. I have to do 6 million of that this quarter. It's stressful, but our pipeline says we should be able to do 8. We'll see. So things are going well. Offices in San Francisco, one in London, a new one in China. We have a WeWork in Austin evaluating whether or not we should create a second headquarters in Austin. So it's been a massive success since 2015, and it's incredibly challenging. And so we'll talk perhaps about some of that later. Sorry. That was long.
Not at all. So our startup is on how do you build custom systems for genomics. The precision medicine is set to transform society. Today, you can detect cancer a few years early by blood tests and not doing invasive biopsies. And that's through analyzing genomic data. That's just one example of how genomics can transform medicine. You can detect rare diseases. So clearly the problem is kind of out there. The technology in terms of genomics is kind of out there. What's missing is really building a very efficient computing system for it. So that's where we come in. And to give you an example, a blood sample which a company like Grail has to analyze is about 1 terabyte, one blood sample. And a Facebook user data is about 0.5 gigabyte. So it's an orders of magnitude difficult problem there, which we need to solve in order to make precision medicine happen. And we are very excited about the problem. The reason why now is a good time is because gene sequencing used to cost, well, billions of dollars a few years back, 10 years back. Now it's costing about $1,000, but we are hopeful that in a few years it will be $100 or less. So the technology on the biological side of things is really happening, and we have to definitely augment it with really cutting-edge computing technology to make it happen. So that's where that was our motivation. And to conclude, biologist George Church had put in a vision for genomics that sometime you can see, let's say you're sitting next to someone and Jason, he sneezes, right? I can just put in a handle sequencer and tell, hey, you have got this virus, don't give it to me. So that's going to actually happen. Today we have handheld handheld sequencers, right? And it's taking a couple of days to do that, but we are confident we'll get it down to minutes. So that's where we are. Okay.
So Ritu, I think your company is maybe the newest of the ones on the panel right now. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about kind of the relationship your company has to the university, whether that's an official one, whether there's licensing, or maybe more informal ones like hiring and so on.
Right. So we are a hardware startup. I mean, I guess hardware and software startup, so we can't open source our stuff, right? So we have a very transparent relationship with the university. The technology was born in University of Michigan a few years back. So we have been working pretty transparently with the OTT to kind of license it out. So I think they have some good rules there for the optioning the technology and giving us the opportunity to patent, which is what the investors look for. So do some bulk patenting, like file 4 or 5 patents together. That's where we have interacted with them so far. They did give us a hard time to rent out an office, but looks like office space is premium here. So we found a cheap place in downtown to rent out and stuff. But my personal opinion is, at least if the technology is born in Michigan, then it has to kind of, you have to go hand in hand with the university, do the right thing, and that makes everything much more easier to handle.
Now, Mike, I think Sortech's been dealing with the university for the longest period. Do you have any words of wisdom for the...
I guess I just, the university not only is a bountiful resource along multiple dimensions.
Listen, for the record, I'm not actually pushing him to say these things. You can say what you like.
Most obviously students, right? We have a lot of interns. We hire a lot of bachelor's students. For some reason, we have not managed to plug into the PhD students at Michigan. I don't know why. We hire way more PhDs from Carnegie Mellon than we do Michigan, right? I don't know why that is. We need to close that loop. There's that, but there's also, and we're fortunate in that we're still a very research-oriented company that executes a large number of research grants. There's a wonderful bunch of collaborators here, right? Multiple people in the audience. We have proposals right now that we're waiting to hear on that we're collaborating on. We have proposals that we're working on right now together with university folks. So we really, it's important to us, not only at Michigan, but other places, but primarily at Michigan, to reach back into the researchers here and work with them and find ways for us to work closely on active research activities. And that leads to students being aware of us, which leads to potential opportunities there as well.
Nell, do you want to, Jason, do you have something to add? You acted like you had something to pitch in. Go for it if you got
totally.
it.
Well, definitely on the office space stuff, come talk to me. So we're working on a deal to get a whole 3-floor building, 24,000 square feet. Anyway, when it comes to the university, having a great relationship with the university, I think, is one of the superpowers of doing business here in Ann Arbor, or it's a magical thing. So almost all of our employees are from University of Michigan. It's a wonderful pipeline, and so that's good. We've done some funding of research at the university. We actually are. I'm interested in striking up a conversation to do some more dealings with OTT. We started with open source software in the university, and when we went to Clink, we started from scratch. So there wasn't really a tangible thing to license. So we ended up not doing a deal with OTT, but the university is a superpower of a connection.
So Nell, you're going to tell us all about the superpowers in depth, right?
Yeah. Do you want me to?
You're welcome to use the slides if you'd like, or you can.
I say I'll just.
Okay, go for it then.
Silly, yeah. So I would just also second what Jason said in the university talent. He actually stole someone from our office, which we're very happy that he's doing well, which actually is fantastic. But at the same time, ouch, No. So I work for a unit on campus that's called the Business Engagement Center, and we are the industry relations effort for campus. And so there's a lot of talk about the work that Tech Transfer does, and I always sort of get a little kumbaya about it and say that, we breathe in and try to bring industry into the university to do sponsored research projects, to recruit our students, to make strategic philanthropic gifts, and then Tech Transfer really breathes out, and they're there to push the technology out into the marketplace. But so we work really closely together, and even more so now under some new leadership between the organizations. But so what we do is try to figure out what are industry's needs, and then how can we find alignment here on campus. It usually starts around talent. Companies are looking to recruit all across campus, certainly undergraduate all the way through PhD, so we can certainly talk about, some things that we could maybe do to help you if there's something, in terms of engaging with particular students and to bring them into your organization. But we cover all 19 schools and colleges, including Dearborn and Flint campuses, so it's a fun challenge. But really the most important thing is finding that alignment. A lot of times industry will come and say, well, we want faculty to build this, and we have to be really we have to have a lot of conversations about what an actual collaboration could look like, because there's lots of consulting opportunities that can be had, but we're really looking for those deep partnerships. And so if it can start through accessing the student talent, or developing collaborative research, then it can grow into many other things. There are a lot of alums that are all over the globe, and they're well placed in various companies, and they want to come back too. They had an incredible experience here, and they want to work with the faculty who maybe had been their advisors. And then they also want to reach back into the students that are there, provide those internships, provide those project-based experiences. And it can take any kind of form. I mean, they're from the very small. We have a statewide grant that helps offset the cost of doing collaborative research. Lots of small companies can't afford working with the university, so we have an interesting matching grant opportunity where the state puts in funding, we put in funding, and then a small company can do a research project with faculty. And so those are like in the 40,000 range, and then all the way up until some incredible multi-million-dollar examples where the Toyota Research Institute has a multi-year, currently I think 30 projects going, which is incredible. And so we really manage the entire spectrum, And we're a service unit, so I always say we're from Central. We're here to help, but we really work with any kind of industry and any faculty, any students that want to have a collaboration, just to make sure that it's a win on both sides.
And have you seen any change in either the pace or the kind of engagements since, say, the last 8 to 10 years, where, like, both certainly on the intellectual side, but more recently on the industrial side, artificial intelligence has become such a big deal?
Yeah, no, it's been incredible. I mean, there's been a massive shift in terms of, the traditional, we're in Michigan, it's an automotive state, and so there was a tremendous amount of, mechanical engineering focused work with the automotives, and there has been I would almost say like a 180 in terms of, there's still a lot of research that happens in that space, certainly, but I mean, with MCity and the connected and autonomous vehicle research that's going on, the AI is the new electricity, there's so much interest, Professor Wellman has put up with me bringing a couple interesting, financial services firms, but the challenge is in getting industry to understand what it actually means to work with academia. It's like, oh, it's this great idea, but then, actually getting to, okay, how are we going to work through, risk issues, or, especially in the AI space, it seems, and, with big data, I mean, it seems particularly challenging of trying to figure out how do we de-identify data, how do we share our data, but that's where we really see a tremendous amount of growth. And I think we are, solving for those problems because there's a huge amount of interest coming from this side too. We see faculty are, tremendously interested. But again, it's striking that interesting balance because, the company, they have a reason that they want to do this. They're looking for that return. And so it's striking that balance to make sure that intellectual property is protected, that licensing agreements are set up that are, equitable and support faculty and students, and that, it's reasonable work.
So now one of the things you mentioned was kind of protecting data sets and privacy issues. Jason, you were talking about that. Jason Corso, you were talking about that just about 15 minutes ago out in the hallway in connection to your company, some of the data set privacy issues. Can you talk maybe about like how your company's grappled with those concerns? Because it seems like whether you're an AI company, no matter what subgenre of AI or data you're working with, you're probably working with these data sets.
Sure. So clearly we want to protect the privacy of the individuals captured in all data, right? I mean, that's part of our fabric as a society here. But right, our goal, Voxel 51, we have a cloud-based platform. It runs in the cloud. Whatever cloud you want, we can run it in, but it's going to be easier for us and you if it runs in the cloud. Google's cloud, AWS, doesn't matter. Why? Because we don't have to worry about hardware support or human time to go deploy on site, like to make sure everything's plumbing right and so on. But then you start to talk to some folks who have deep pockets and you want to talk to them, who say, well, my data is special and I don't want it to leave my premises. And we have to deal with that. And so we have had to basically, we're in the process of doing it now, but figure out the right way to build a system, engineer a system at a technical level that is easily deployed either in the cloud or on premises, essentially setting up sort of like a local cloud. There are huge amounts of issues there for us now, right? So we have to figure out how to get updates to that software, which we're used to doing quickly and easily locally in a time when, people expect changes and fixes to happen very quickly. So I think that's the primary notion of privacy that we're talking about, which I think is a little different than what Nella is talking about in terms of sort of like maybe patient protection or something like that. But right, like so some auto company number one really wants to make sure that we are not going to misuse their data when we are working with auto company number two, for example. And so this has created this whole engineering problem for us, which we are, I guess, happy to solve because it creates a bigger business for us. But at the same time, it's a technical challenge.
Yeah.
I can't wait until you're asked whether you put your local cloud in the cloud.
I might have been asked that at the poster session today. I don't know.
So Mike, your company has probably seen a migration from like on-premises to cloud things, and you probably also have customers who are extremely sensitive about.
Yes, we do. We have customers that are extremely sensitive, and there are regulations we have to follow around the restrictions of our data in terms of export. And one of the real quirks of that is that if someone who is not a U.S. person has the ability to access the data, then that counts as export. And so as we're working with cloud providers, we need to understand whether they have provide a service to guarantee that the cloud, the data and the people who access the data align with these. And so some do, right? Amazon has a thing they call the Gov Cloud that you pay a lot extra for and fits within these constraints. But for example, there's not right now, I think here at Michigan, Google basically provides your email. There's not a cloud email provider that aligns with these government regulations. So we don't have the ability to outsource our email to some sort of cloud service because no one can align with these restrictions, which means we're burdened with running our own email server on site, which we would very much prefer not to do, but there's no way around that.
Jason Mars, you're becoming very animated in response to some of Mike's comments.
No. I was just really, what Jason Corso was saying absolutely resonates. Like, we started with on-prem first, dealing with financial services industry and their actual customers' data. They need the entire solution to be siloed off on their premises. But what I'd say is the challenge only starts with figuring out from a technical standpoint how to do that on-prem deployment. We use Docker for all the institutions that do Docker. We've done every cockamamie deployment you could imagine, in Docker, out of Docker, on Windows, on Linux, like with Oracle, with every database you could imagine. So we had to do 15 or 16 different splinters of our wrapper for the deployment. But where it gets really challenging is once you deploy, you're deploying with technical teams at these institutions that aren't very good, like technically. And then there's a customer success function that you have to keep up and running. And operationally, I think that's harder for us. We're gonna be able to solve the technical stuff. You'll be able to build that software. But the operational alignment between how you make changes and update and so forth, and how you get them to be successful, because they've never used Linux before, and they have to do it themselves because they're not gonna let you touch their stack. And this happens, right? When in many industries, to really get technology out, you have to do on-prem because of compliance and regulatory issues, because of privacy and data controls. And that forces you to become a different company operationally. And so I think I was just super, we should definitely share some horror stories with you.
So Ritu, at this point, I think I would like to ask a question that is related to something that was brought up earlier, which was the crushing amount of time that all this required. So everyone on the panel has something else in life. Often that's being a professor, but not necessarily. We all have other things. So what have you found in Sequel's life so far to be sort of the level of time that it requires? What's the most surprising aspect of that, and how do you reconcile it with other obligations?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when SQL started, it was an SBIR grant that we got, and so I had to go on a reduced appointment with the university. So that helped a bit. For a few months, I was trying to boot up the startup and stuff, and then we got some good employees in place who could sort of take the burden off, and that's basically delegation is the way to how I've been working out so far. And going forward, I don't know, it's it's going to be a challenge, but like Jason said, I'm also on tenure track, so we'll see how that works out. I don't have an answer.
Just real quick, I've thought about writing a book about this, honestly. Like, seriously, just real quick. The way that I've approached it, so I think the number one, my highest priority and passion is to work with the smartest minds in the world and create contributions to the intellectual community. So I believe that our companies could be opportunities to do research, right? So we've published a paper at NACL last year. We're submitting 2 more this year. So we, part of the achieving the mission that I think is a main part of the DNA of a professor, I think that could be accomplished with the company as an alignment piece of that. I think that's critically important for making this a success. The second thing is the reduced appointment for the first few years, I think is critical, right? Because you're going to have to do a lot of travel. You're going to have to build and nurture your lieutenants. And because when you can't travel as much because you have a teaching schedule, you're going to need those lieutenants to be able to function at a high level as you. And so that's your job for the 1 to 2 years that you get on reduced duty. Once you lock those things in, and if you accomplish your goals in those 2 things, you'll be able to create a new channel for research that has production-grade validation, so you know that the research is even better than what you were doing in the lab, and then you can have lieutenants that will do the road stuff so that you can stay home and also do the teaching and service duties of the university. So that's what I've been orchestrating, and so far so good. Yeah, anyway, that's what I'm saying.
I'm going to say I can't really talk because I only have one job, unlike most of the rest of those. Okay. Well, the one thing I will say, just to pick up what this Jason said, is my experience in running a company is building that set of lieutenants is a full-time job, right? And that is the most important job. And so, what you do when you're running a company, number one on that list is building the set of lieutenants under you and developing them. And when we hire someone new at that company, we go into it with the mindset that it's going to take at least 2 years before that person is up and running at the company. It's a long time, and it takes a lot of attention, and it's the number one job.
So I have a little different experience because I have not taken a reduced appointment at the university. But we also ran the company a little differently for the first 2 years, right? So you're 3 years old, 75 people. We're 2 years old, 9 people, right? But I think I had a few different types of constraints in my own life that would prevent me from taking the reduced service here. And also we were building the computer vision program up here, and at the same, so I felt like there's sort of a commitment that I had made here that I wanted to keep going, and maybe a little different than other situations. So what we did is, we decided to grow organically for the first 18 months or so of the company until this past summer. We had a large grant. $1.25 million from the government is not a small grant, and it's essentially the size of a typical seed you'd get to start a company anyway. And so we kind of built up a core level of technology and built up a core set of operations in the company for the first year and a half, and a core team of 4, right? So that was our size until very recently, when we actually went from 4 to 9 in a month, right? So. So that was that decision. But then there was an inflection point over the summer that was like, the AI summer is here. Video's critical. We're talking to a lot of people who seem to need what we want. So if we're really going to make the big impact that we think we can, then we need to switch and go and move to a venture-backed, stop growing organically, grow fast, sort of make more sort of critical decisions. So I'm sort of at that inflection point now, and it's working out fairly well. I mean, I spend about 10 hours a day working at the company, 10 hours a day working at the university, and about 10 hours a day working with my 3 kids. Right? So that kind of thing. But
so that leaves another 10 for racquetball, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I think but it certainly does demand a lot of time. Like in our company, we, probably like many people, we're sort of very data driven in our decision making. So it takes us a lot of time to make a critical decision. And that's much longer than I thought, basically. So any sort of core decision, like should we go for venture capital funding? Should we not? It's like, months of unquantifiable time just to sort of go through the decision tree. So yeah.
Well, that's really interesting. So what would the rest of you say? Sort of, Jason just mentioned one of the surprising things that he encountered. What do you think is the most surprising thing that you've found in the years you've been working on it?
So the most surprising thing I found is that investors don't care about technology. They care about the market. They care about the market size, the market share, the pricing. They say that you guys are tech wizards. I'm sure you can solve it. Tell us how much you will earn. So that was a big surprise to me. But it also made me think in a different, made me think more like an entrepreneur rather than a researcher. So it helped me transition a little bit, balance that 2 roles, but that was a huge surprise.
Jason, Mike?
Yeah, so the surprises are coming with all the time. There's in any book you'll hear about, scaling is hard, and when you grow, the company breaks at a certain number, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yeah, okay, cool, whatever. It's so crazy real. You know, some of my biggest surprises has to do with, first of all, we're spoiled as professors, absolutely spoiled. The PhD student that I would have considered in my whole career, like, you know, let's say the worst student I've ever experienced, would be like in the upper, you know, like I would hire them tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? It turns out that, and this sounds kind of, you know, I don't mean for it to sound negative, but it turns out that, like, we engage such talented individuals all the time. One big surprise to me was how you have to, you know, how you have to create progress, create a machine that progresses and maximizes its potential without everyone in that machine necessarily being at the kind of talent level we're used to as professors. That's the biggest surprise about the world and about other functions that aren't science functions, how most of the world thinks differently than, you know, we do. We're really kind of different at how we think. So that's a big surprise. That's a big surprise.
I had the same surprise Jason said. I think that in some ways, you know, the training you get as a researcher actually is counterproductive to what you need to do as a business leader. All that training tells you to gather lots and lots of data and not make a decision until it is very fully supported by the data. And I think some cases in business, that can be too slow, right? You got to sometimes make a decision without the amount of data you'd want, and move quicker than that. And it can be very hard to do that when you know that there's more data that can be gathered, and you know that the decision you're about to make isn't really fully supported, but sometimes you got to go. And so that can be a real challenge. I think the other thing that surprised me is how much it is about the people, and specifically how much it is about trust. You know, the people having trust in the company having trust in the people, and how much of the management and interpersonal challenges really boil down to, are you trusting people? Are people trusting you? Are you demonstrating that trust? You know, that turns out to be really important and come up in lots and lots of subtle ways that you maybe don't appreciate until you've lived through a couple, stepping on a couple landmines.
So, you know, one thing that's very helpful. So one thing that, you know, makes your experiences very interesting right now is that we're all kind of experiencing this wave of interest in AI. You're motivated either by technical or certain, in some cases, industrial trends. But there's another trend, which is kind of this growing interest in technology entrepreneurship in Michigan and the Ann Arbor area. You've already commented about the university and some of the good things about it. What would be one way to improve it? Like, if you could, you know, wave your wand and change one angle of the local environment, what would you do?
Awesome. I'll try to be brief. No, but actually, first of all, I've engaged many universities, right? And I have a good understanding of how many universities. I truly believe Michigan is the best university if you're an entrepreneurial professor to be at, right? Because of the support ecosystem and the culture of enthusiasm about supporting the efforts to do that. It's phenomenal, and the institution is, the way they approach, you know, like, you know, working with your students being, you know, something that's well managed, ombudsman, and not like just banned, right? Or, you know, it's a wonderful environment. The number one thing, honestly, that I would improve is I took an approach that I call it a VC street approach, right? Which is an approach where you go out and you try to get VC funding early on. And what happens, and I did the SBIR stuff too, but I said no, like, I was like, SBIR, the bar for creating the forcing functions to make sure that the business is as competitive and as good as it can be is lower with a grant than it is if you have VCs beating you up all the time. So that, and scrutinizing your idea at the highest bar of, you know, predicting success. And so the molding that happens with that, I think, is something that is value to create the right seed for your business to grow from. So I always encourage everyone to still go and pitch VCs and understand and reason about how your company should be. And I think that the University of Michigan the way that they mentor professors on an entrepreneurial pursuit, I think it's missing that the highest level of expert VC folks that are in the milieu creating culture. It's missing VC advisors. It's missing of the highest caliber. It's missing a culture that can kind of, like for instance, at a yearly event where the best VCs in the world and University of Michigan professors get together to smooge or whatever, like let's have that event because that'll create a culture. Like that's the change I would want to see. That kind of work, yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess I agree that the level of willingness, like the Center for Entrepreneurship, like the resources that faculty have here, and I think students have as well, I think is unmatched. Actually, it's really really amazing. But however, there's one aspect I think two aspects. One is that I'd like the number of seats on this stage to be tripled, and I'd like this sort of the support from the university for that, and whether or not they're university people in some sense, I think that's valuable. So there's some. I don't know what the right answer for that is, but maybe it doubles into the other half of it, which is that I think that the way universities relate to society and the way universities relate to entrepreneurship needs to evolve a little bit. We're still stuck in like the 50s and 60s a little bit about what it means to be faculty, what it means to be an entrepreneur. And I think some other universities, such as Georgia Tech, University of Washington, are a little bit ahead of Michigan in this way. Like I have colleagues at Georgia Tech who have an arrangement with their university where they actually spend half the year at Facebook and half the year at Georgia Tech. And it's like a timeless thing. That's just what they're doing. And I think we need to think more creatively as a university if we want to truly become the leading university for entrepreneurship and technology leadership going forward.
So one thing maybe linked to this is you're all Ann Arbor based. I know Clink at least has some offices outside the Ann Arbor area. Does Sortec, is it solely, yeah? Yep. Maybe you guys could, Mike, you could talk a little bit about sort of the decision to do that and what kind of work you do outside the Ann Arbor area.
Sure, so we have 2 offices. The largest office is here in Ann Arbor. We've got a second office in Orlando that's about 35, 40 people. We picked Orlando for customer-based reasons because there's a large sort of training and simulation community down there. Now, as we're growing and we have hit the limit of how much space in our current building our landlord is willing to give us, he's a little concerned about diversity of tenants, and we're a big enough piece of his pie that if we leave, he's going to be in a hole. So now, as we grow, we're having to consider, should we open other offices and where? Should we open an office across the parking lot or across the country, right? And what is the difference between across the parking lot and across the country versus in the same building? And so we're now being more driven by customer-oriented decisions, trying to put offices near customers. And we have a little bit of work with organizations here in Michigan, but not a ton. I will say from a space perspective, Ann Arbor, I don't know what your experience has been. Ann Arbor is a weird place in that for smaller companies, there's lots of space, and then there's this dead zone, right? Where for certain size companies, there's not a lot of space in Ann Arbor, and then when you get really big, things open up again. And we're kind of in that dead zone. Sounds like some others here might be in that weird sort of size dead zone. So you got that to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of our other, all of our office strategy has been around this customer success function. We have to do on-prem deployments with everybody, and we've got Barclays in the UK. Their engineers are a Pune office of the most insane kind of engineering system. They have one guy whose full-time job is to download software, one guy whose full-time job is to unzip the software, one guy whose full-time job, it's crazy, and they need a lot of support and documentation. So, we had to send people on site, it's a long flight, the time zones are crazy. So that's the China office. We also have OCBC in Singapore, and they're very demanding as well. We have Ishbank in Turkey. So that's the China office story, and it's customer success technical engineers that go on site to help them. That's in the same time zone. London is more of a sales function because there's just tons of banks So we have a WeWork there, a permanent WeWork. San Francisco, there's just talent that just didn't want to move. And so we've got 4 people full-time there and like 2 interns in San Francisco in a 6-space office. And then they're, growing. They're hiring 3 more people in that office. And so, that's what creates it. The Ann Arbor situation is fascinating, right? Because we're currently in that dead zone and we're evaluating options. So we have 3 proposals, RFPs. Actually, commercial real estate is insane. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to rebuild the space. Whatever space we get, whatever building we get, we have to rebuild it. So there's right now we're looking at a building. There's no NDA. It's the Kiwanis building. I don't know if you guys know this Kiwanis building. It's 3 floors, 24,000 square feet. Beautiful. It's a complete mess inside. So it's like a $2 million project to rebuild it. We're working with the same dual security people that did their offices to schedule out a rebuild. I think we're close on the negotiations. We should be able to move in July. But if you want to do a space thing, you got to get a space, and then you got to spend a bunch of money to turn it into actual office space that's reasonable.
Guess what size space you're going to need 5
Oh, yeah.
years from now because it's a 5
Exactly. So our guess is we need to support 200 people, right? So that's why we like that as an office, and then we need training rooms to train people and stuff like that. But Austin is interesting because we're thinking about we expanded to all verticals. So financial services is what we started with. We have like 2 logos in each of healthcare, automotive, and QSR, quick service restaurants, fast food. And so we could have this explosive thing. And so if that happens, we might need to get like 300 engineers. And that, so we're talking to investors about like a Austin thing for that. Duo did the exact same thing. So that's a pattern. But I don't know if I buy that needs to happen. So I don't know, but it's fascinating. I think that's a big thing about Ann Arbor that's a constraint on startups.
Huh. Yeah. That's really interesting. So all right, so one last question, and then if we have time, we can open it up to the crowd, which is, one of the characteristics of working on these companies is that there's more ideas than you can fit into Jason's 40 hours a day. And so, if I gave you like the double that Jason appears to already have, then what's the other company that you're not working on right now? Like, what's the most exciting thing that came just second?
I think my need is to have as a company that makes my double.
I see.
I think I would work on a company that is a combination of Clink and what the keynote speaker was talking about. That would literally watch me do what I do on a computer and basically minimize my time needing to do that. Right, so I already pay a human to do this for me. So I have someone who reads most of my email and processes it for me quickly. And it's hard that to I think it's reached the limit because I have to interact with her to train her. Whereas if she was just watching what I did all the time, it would be faster. Everything from booking flights to just general quick responses of email. I think it's doable, and it would be. That's what I would do. And then the other one, another company would be a Keurig machine for a vehicle. I've been driving long road trips, and I want to make a coffee in the car. And I just think right there, that's
This
my other
seems outrageously dangerous, but sure. We can put a fryolator in the back seat.
Yeah. So I think the company for us that's just below the threshold is some sort of company that can. If you had a company that had a database of the 100,000 most dangerous intersections in the U.S. And you just had high fidelity data on all those intersections, if you could find a way to capture all that and put it into a database and offer that for sale to everyone who's trying to build self-driving cars, that would be worth a lot of money.
So this is probably going to happen. So we probably don't need to create a company for it, but I just want a whisper device, an AI device, in-ear device. Because the hands-free phone kits, something like that, but much more like always on. And it's a whisper device. It just makes observations as to what's going on around you and then delivers insights to you. Like, oh, by the way, I just noticed that you walked by this thing and you've been looking for that yesterday and you just didn't even pay attention, so you might want to go back there or something. And it's just there, all right? It can see around, it's doing stuff, and it can hear. It's connected to your email. It reads it, and it just makes observations and whispers it into your ear at all times. That's what I want to see happen in the world. Yeah. No, we should. Yeah.
That's a little scary, Jason. But I love it.
I'll do it.
Well, so a lot of my research is focused on how do you accelerate hardware for AI. So fast processors, custom processors for AI. And there's a lot of investment in that area too. So I would be quite tempted if, I could have maybe 48 hours in a day, I would do that, build a startup on AI hardware.
Well, I think mine's going to be local real estate. It sounds like that's the best company I can come up with. All right, so let's thank the panel for participating, first of all. And then we do have, I think, 3 or 4 minutes for questions if anyone in the audience has one.
Hi. So my question is, as a professor, you get this great idea. You decide you want to build a startup. What are kind of the first steps that you take to move that idea towards like startup world?
You can take it first.
I can take it first? Yeah. Okay. Well, the approach we took was we started pitching it to the OTT and the VCs which they have, and also wrote an SBIR grant. Since you're a professor, you probably are writing anyway 20 grants a year, so why not one more? And these are small business grants given out by National Science Foundation, NIH, DARPA. All the sort of big funding agencies do it. So that could be one way to sort of get some money and then hire people and then get started.
So my way is super unorthodox and unconventional. The first thing you do when you have the idea and you're ready to go, the first thing you do is you make a CEO friend, right? You make a CEO friend local, a company you like, pretend that you want to be an employee, right? Pretend that you want to be hired and say, can I have coffee? I'm looking for a job. And then have coffee and pick that CEO's brain. Understand everything you can learn from that CEO as to how to do this thing. That's what I did, actually. And it was Guy Suter at Trove. It was very fascinating. You guys might know. And then what you'll end up having to do is articulate what you want to do to many people. A lot of people try to keep it close to the chest because they think people will steal your idea. No, dude. Like, talk to other CEOs, talk to VCs about your idea, and then you feel it. Feel what the tea leaves are saying about what you're saying. If the energy is right, you got to figure out how to get money. The first way to get money on a VC approach is you have to have a small little prototype. So you got to be creative to figure out how you get a small little prototype and then a narrative around that prototype that is the idea in a slide deck. Prototype, narrative, and then you can go get money. You can get small money, $50K to pay someone for making a better prototype so you can go get a seed round, which would be like $2 million, right? And you can do it. And like, if you were to do it, you would get money so fast if you followed that track. And with that $2 million, that gives you the lifeblood to breathe for a while, and you'll have a VC, hopefully a good one, on your board that's going to make introductions so you never have to connive to get more friends, more CEO friends. They're going to be pushing people onto you so that you learn and grow as much as possible. VCs, not VCs, lawyers and CEOs and anyone who can mentor you, the VC will connect you to. So that's how you get started, from my perspective. Yeah.
Well, if there's another question, I agree with what your guys are saying. If there's another question, we could take that one.
Hi. So I'm currently a student, and I'm wondering what advice you would give for somebody who's looking to start getting into this field and like start doing this sort of research.
So you're asking what are the right ways to get into AI, or the right ways to get into entrepreneurship, which are
I'm
rather
thinking the right
different.
ways to get into AI specifically.
Oh, I guess you should do everything you can. I mean, watch some good AI movies, read some good AI books, maybe take a course or two on mathematics. That'd be good. I mean, basically, like what I've always loved to do personally is build things. I mean, classes, they're good. I mean, I'm a teacher, fine. I like to teach. a little bit. I mean, like, I'd rather do things. I'd much rather build things out. I think all students should do that as well, right? So the best way to test if you know something is to try to construct it. So that's the best I could say, I guess. I don't know if you have others.
I would say the exact same thing, right? There's a lot of AI packages out there that you can download for free. They're open source, right? A lot of them have, tutorials. They have existing sort of sample projects, right? Build something. Get TensorFlow. Play around with it, right? Get something else. Get the SOAR architecture. Do the SOAR tutorial. Do those things, right? And that's I think more important than classwork or books or online classes. Hands-on experience, playing around with building things at 2 in the morning.
Yeah, build a poetry generator. One of the best people that we hired, he actually failed all of his interviews that I brought. I forced to bring him in anyway, and he's now one of our best people. And I brought him in because he spent like months building a poetry generator, for fun on TensorFlow. Go to TensorFlow.com, get TensorFlow, and build something really cool that's AIE.
Are you an undergrad here or grad student?
I'm currently an undergrad at Oakland University, but I'm looking at the different schools in the area.
Yeah, I mean, I would do also a summer research project with one of the professors who can work with you, right? Get some hands-on experience with research and see whether you like it or not. It's not everybody's cup of tea. I love it, but you should definitely have, if you get a chance, try it out.
Thank you very much.